The product for a professional services company is the expertise.
I care about customer retention because that's a sign of customer satisfaction.
And if you can do that more often than not and just look at it as solving problems, it's much easier way to see yourself as an expert.
Money's important because it's a tool, right? And business can be a way of creating that. The evolution of fulfillment is focused on different outcomes now.
Every day's a school day, isn't it?
No meeting is so important that we can't take a minute and say hello.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that helps professional services firms from around the world increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Jared Leuschen, founder of Blue Tree Technology Group, an IT consulting firm he's been leading for over a decade. A serial entrepreneur with an eclectic background spanning finance, quick service franchising, real estate, and even a Harley-Davidson rental agency, Jared brings a unique perspective to the technology services space. After building and exiting multiple product-based businesses, Blue Tree Technology represents his first venture in professional services and the one he says has brought him the greatest sense of fulfillment. Today, Jared and his team serve executives running organizations of all sizes, helping them navigate complex technology challenges while building a culture centered on impact and meaningful results. Jared, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Saeed. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think in terms of your background, and you definitely have a lot to say for yourself in the sense that you've got a really interesting background with being a entrepreneur with multiple exits, but also understanding that you're still in the game of business, right? And you're still running a company even after your exits. But I'm just really looking forward to just tapping into the knowledge and insights that you're able to share with us and the viewers and listeners today. So I think it should be a great conversation. So looking forward to it. But I think the best place always to start with every single episode, I find, is sharing, I guess, learning a little bit more about who you are and how you got to where you are today, and paint the picture for our viewers and listeners out there of who Jared Leuschen is.
Goodness, that's a loaded question. Yes, yeah, we could break that up in a lot of ways. Who I am as a human being has many facets, but yeah, as it relates to business, as you mentioned, I have a pretty varied background. I started, I would say, probably like so many young men in the late 70s, early 80s growing up. I started my first business mowing lawns, right? So I started getting chops and getting comfortable talking to people and asking for money at a very young age and trying to figure out how to increase value. And so even as a young boy, I remember expanding into like pet sitting and house sitting and watering lawns, not just mowing them while people were on vacation, and finding ways to just increase value. And I carried that forward through life, and going through college and starting to get interested in technology and building and selling computers, both nationally as internationally, using eBay as a forum or a platform for that. I got into vending businesses for a while, going around to manufacturing plants and making sure that the employees had access to food and beverages and things like that on a consistent basis. Yeah, a lot of things there. But my big start into what I call like real business leadership and ownership came in when I started a franchise holding company and invested primarily in Cold Stone creameries. And that was interesting. Ice cream is its own beast, and quick service is challenging. Food is challenging. Food waste with dairy products is extremely challenging. But it was the first opportunity I had to actually manage personnel, right? And that was significant for me because it kind of catapulted me onto the road I'm on, the path I'm on, the place I am now from a leadership perspective, and finding value and fulfillment through leading others, supporting others in their journey, right, and their growth cycle, whatever that looks like. Trying to figure out as my path goes on what type of leader I want to be. Is it important to provide service-based type of leadership, and then ending up where I'm at now, which is we're focused on values and trying to find value alignment between personnel, myself, the company culture and values, and then our clients and the values that they hold in a high regard or prioritize. And that's not always easy, right? But I attribute a lot of the success we've had to the path that I went forward. managing teenagers in high school and then taking on more strategic roles in corporations as well as in my own companies. And now for the last 10 years, managing Blue Tree Technology Group and getting the opportunity to support a lot of professionals who have been doing this much longer than I have and trying to find a way to contribute and add value to their growth cycle when they're closer to the end of their careers. And a lot of our clients benefit from that experience and expertise, but it's fun. It's different. It keeps me challenged and keeps me growing in the process, and I find that very fulfilling.
I really loved your journey and I love your story, but I think it's really interesting the pivot it's not really a pivot, the move that you made from a product orientated company and going into services, professional services kind of based company. People are at the heart of all companies, right? Leadership is integral, especially in and in every kind of company. But what I wanted to really ask you is, what are the biggest differences that you have experienced in the leadership that you have to present to to the team, to the company, between the two types of companies, right? Because naturally, the end goal is slightly different, right? When you have a product orientated company versus the product for a professional services company is the expertise. So how do you lead in those two environments?
I love this question. I'm not sure I've been asked this question before.
Well, I'm glad.
This
I'm
Nice job.
I'll take that.
So I think there is a very different approach. And my experience is limited to the organizations that I've either worked for or have run and operated. So it's probably not going to apply to every example. But I will say that selling there's even nuance between, like, significant difference between selling a product to consumers versus businesses, right? And how do you lead individuals in those environments? One of the things that I have found that is incredibly different in leading people in a services organization that I've learned through time and experience is understanding and how to get the people to understand their value and promote their value, right? Because to your point, Syed, the product is the people, right? I promote and we promote as an organization the idea that it's the smart brains that are coming to the table. It's the people with experience and expertise. That is our product. But those people, not everybody in the world operates this way, but the people that I have attracted into my life and into my organization are somewhat humble. And so and I appreciate that, right? I like that. I got an amazing team, and they're not arrogant, but they have a lot of confidence in what they can do. But getting them to market themselves in front of a customer is sometimes challenging in that respect, right? When you have a product and you can say, hey, here's a bowl of ice cream, here's a $20,000 Harley-Davidson that you get to ride on for a day and enjoy the open road, it's easier to create a story and help them imagine and picture the customer to picture themselves in experiencing the value we want to create. When we're trying to market a potential outcome that could take 6 months or a year down the road, and the product we're selling is the end result of the value they're going to get as an individual, a team, an organization, but the product we have to deliver to help them get to that end goal is our people. And so it's like, well, this person's really smart. And at some point we just have to say, you just need to trust us.
Yeah.
Right? Just trust us. Give us a shot. And so we leverage things like, other customers and past experience, but it is amazing how challenging it is when you could have the best person sitting across from the table. It is socially not acceptable to be braggadocious about one's own accomplishments. Yet that's what's required to sell, human capital, human intelligence, right?
I absolutely love your response, and I think you're spot on in what you've said. And it actually reminds me of, I have had an actual conversation recently with one of our clients. We're engaged with essentially training their consultants to do exactly what you're saying, market themselves and become more prominent in doing so. And what it made me think was the fact that how founders, CEOs are natural knowing how important it is to go, okay, well, no, this is how you sell. This is what you need to do to market your abilities and things like that. And when I'm having these conversations with this team, what I found was a lot of the times these guys are experts. These guys are exceptionally intelligent and they know much more about these topics than the average person or their clients, right? And yet they're so scared to call themselves an expert, right? They're terrified to say it, but they know so much. And so it's a battle in itself to get someone who is an expert and isn't comfortable with marketing themselves as an expert because they know that they don't know everything, right? And if you know you don't know everything, you feel like, how can you be an expert? But you know more than the clients that whose problem you are solving, right? And once you can make that shift in your mind, then you can go, okay, there's a gap there that I can help. And I may not be the most intelligent person in the world. I'm not Einstein, but I know enough here to solve the problem that this person is presenting in front of me. And if you can do that more often than not and just look at it as solving problems, it's much easier way to see yourself as an expert. But honestly, what you said, it just made me think it is an uphill battle a lot of the times because
Yeah, what's that saying? Say that the more you know, the more you learn how much you don't know, right?
yeah,
It's
exactly that, exactly that. Every day's a school day, isn't it? And it's literally it's literally that. But yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with what you said there. I guess so. You mentioned previously that earlier in the conversation that fulfillment, you're able to enjoy leadership in fulfillment. How has your definition of success evolved from your earlier ventures to where you are now? You've run a lot of businesses. How has that evolved?
I could probably answer this in a lot of ways, but the first thing coming to mind is the evolution of fulfillment is focused on different outcomes now, right? The different targets and different outcomes. When I was younger, it was coming from a place of scarcity, and so the idea of business was an opportunity to make money, right? To get out of the position I was in, which was a place of lack, right? And then slowly starting to build organizations with other people, it was the same thing. Okay, volume. Now we want growth. We want success so that we can do more for the sake of doing more and building something more and making more money, right? Increasing revenue, increasing profits, etc. And I think there's a place for that in the capitalistic world that's very fitting, right? What I've learned, and I think this is probably related to somewhat to my age and also going through some personal healing, right, from some of the things that were traumatic in my childhood and other things. I get fulfillment out of my target is different and the goal is different now. It's money's important because it's a tool, right? And business can be a way of creating that. And there's opportunity to employ people, and that creates meaning in society, right? But more so, it's about connecting with other humans and learning about others so that I can learn more about myself in the process, and trying to identify true like wins in the personal experience. So much what we do can be boiled down to like a system overhaul or a process that we're rewriting for the first time in 20 years for an organization that helps them be more efficient. Or we can think about instead the people who are actually doing the work and what their lives are like and how fulfilling their jobs are, or how frustrating their jobs might be if they have some inefficient process or policy or technology in place. And if we think about it from that perspective and we talk to those individuals and we figure out what's really going on and what's really making them not want to show up for work in the day, then we can start thinking about the art of the possible, right? And then get to an outcome that not only aligns to the business vision, but also allows these humans, these people to not just be okay with their job, but actually start looking forward to their job because we're removing the complexity, we're making things more simple, easier, and we're opening the lines of communication between potentially business units, but definitely between co-workers. And now we see the opportunity for like creativity and the freedom to start thinking about what could we do different tomorrow that we're not already doing, because now we have the freedom to start thinking about bigger picture stuff. And now we see employees downstream who have never had a voice before start to have a voice because they have the ability to start thinking for themselves and adding value in a different way than they have before. And so that can be incredible, really incredible.
I want to touch on that because you sound like you understand how to build people and how to build an organization, and from that being able to go downstream with employees and giving them a voice and giving them an opportunity to actually be creative. I wanted to ask you, how has post-pandemic life affected how you have built the culture of your organization? How have you been able to get to the point you are today where you're happy, and maybe there's improvements you can make, but you're happy with what's done? But what has happened since the pandemic that has allowed you to be able to build the culture you have done today?
I will tell you that when the pandemic hit and everyone closed up shop and froze budgets, it had a negative impact on our culture. Prior to that time, we were operating in a very traditional model. We showed up on site during pre-sales process, initial advisory and consulting. Our people were going on site to have workshops and things like that. We did some things remote and virtual, but it was maybe 50% at best. When the pandemic hit, we shut our office down, right? And like so many other businesses did, and our people started working from home. And within a year's time frame, we had to figure out, like so many others, how to stay alive and how to keep active and continue to add value in a 100% remote capacity. And we figured it out, right? And we were able to lean on others who were doing it faster and better than us. So when we got to the point where we hit another obstacle, we were able to lean on the experience from others in that short period of time. But we got so good at it that when things started opening back up, we just decided to continue with the model because it allowed a lot of flexibility and freedom as a business, as a leader. There's improvement in profitability because we have less expenses, right, related to that. We don't have to pick from a small talent pool. We get to go wider now and find the best of the best in markets that weren't accessible to us before. Our customers get to benefit from that experience, that expertise, right? We don't have to be limited to serving just customers within a geographical area, right? We can now remotely provide support just about anywhere in the world. And so there's value there, but it's a question about culture. The hardest part about the shift was maintaining a culture of alignment, a culture of we had fun. When the team parties go away, the holiday parties go away. It's really hard. It's really hard when you're not physically in person. And I think there's an energy component there. When you're sitting in the same room with someone, or you're standing in the break room getting water together, or you need a break and you're going over to talk to a coworker, there can be a motivational element. We can feed off each other in some capacity. We can show up for each other in different ways. When we shifted to a virtual world, it was all about meetings, and we showed up with an agenda, and we get in and we get out, and we started to lose the human connection component internally. And it took some focused effort when we realized what this was happening. It wasn't me alone. Others were making comments, and my leadership team was very instrumental in identifying these things. And so we started doing simple things. We tried a couple lunch and learns, sent everybody a lunch basket, and got on lunch together, and we tried doing book clubs, and so we've tried a few things over the years. But what we've learned is, and what I've learned personally has made the biggest difference, is to take pause every day in every meeting for just a few minutes to just check in and say hello and bring out something personal from everybody engaged. It's that one thing alone. It's no meeting is so important that we can't take a minute and say hello, right? And what has occurred through this conscious effort of trying to take a very simplistic approach to a problem in culture has resulted in a better culture than we had before. So our team knows personal things about their coworkers, right? We know who's just got out of the hospital, or whose spouse is in the hospital, or who's having a grandbaby for the first time, or who just had a car accident. And we're talking about the personal challenges, how they're overcoming them, and then that that brings in a level of connection that makes everybody want to show up and spend more time together and collaborate, and that spills over into our clients now. We're having similar conversations now with our customer contacts, these executives who are running bigger companies than mine and have a lot of important things to do, and we're learning about them because we're asking these questions that are respectful, and but we used to feel like maybe we're unprofessional, but we're finding ways to blend the two.
I absolutely love that response. I think I've asked that question before about culture and how things have changed post pandemic. But I think what strikes me with that answer is I've never heard of a response like that, in the sense that understanding something personal about someone, or knowing something personal about someone, will naturally bring connectivity with that person, because there's a level of vulnerability. And just by doing that within an organization, you have people who, albeit they might be set apart because of distance, because they're on a Zoom screen or a MS Teams screen or whatever it might be, they're still connected. And you have to be able to find a way to transcend that computer screen and have connectivity between people without proximity. And I think that's a really, really interesting way of approaching it. And I think it's really a lesson for our viewers and listeners who are building cultures and who are building teams, to actually think about when moving forward, and how you will actually bring your teams together. I think that's really, really important. I have so many other questions, Jared, but because of time, I have to jump into the next segment of the podcast, which is what we call
Okay.
the Entrepreneur's Room. It's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders think and operate when running their business. So at this stage of the podcast, I always ask the same question, which is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
How I'm spending my days today is different than how I typically do. I've been doing some healing physically on my own, and that's starting to come to an end. I'm starting to transition back into full time in the business. But I like to. I found that time management is a really important component for anybody in life, right? And I'm no different in that it's a constant struggle, and so I'm constantly pivoting and shifting and reevaluating how I'm spending my time. But the most important things I've learned over the last couple of years, especially as we've grown and there's been an added layer of complexity and personnel in the organization, is to block my calendar off in the times that are most sacred for me. So the two roles that I feel that are my most important roles for the organization are, one, strategy, vision planning, strategic planning, and then execution. And then the second is revenue growth, right? Business development. And so I block off the first half of my day for those two priorities. So no one's allowed to book time on my calendar. I don't accept meetings during these times. I keep them sacred. They're important to me, and I get all of my personal things out of the way in the morning prior to that block time, right? The exercise I do to mentally prepare, physically prepare, the the normal day-to-day, prep. But then afternoons, depending on the day of the week, looks a little different. So I keep time blocked off for sales calls where I'm meeting with a new executive for the first time and helping to establish trust and confidence and moving the engagement forward. There's a couple key clients that I'm still intimately engaged with for projects, et cetera, because they're more complex or strategic in nature. So a couple days a week, I have weekly meetings with those folks and team members, and then we have team meetings where I'm sitting down with sales, with finance, with marketing, with service delivery, operations, 1 hour a week to go through, what our priorities are, and then what we're targeting next week, and we get to hold everybody accountable to KPIs, et cetera, during those times. But that's pretty much how I manage my time right now. Try and make time for food in the middle there somewhere. That's
Yeah.
important.
Try and make time for blinking and breathing as well. I couldn't hearing that. It reminds me of myself, in the sense that, like, for a long time, that morning slot wasn't in my calendar. That early morning, like, what needs to be done without uninterrupted time from the team and from the rest of the world. And when I added that in, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Well, it's when we're most fresh in the morning, right?
Yes,
We've got good
absolutely.
rest. Hopefully, we've gotten some food and exercise, right? We're like the most clear-minded. As the day goes on, it just deteriorates.
Just down. Yeah, exactly that. And that's why, yeah, exactly. Leave the high leverage jobs that you have to do in the morning, and as the day goes on, when you're trying to get food in and then everything, it's definitely time for
It's
everything else.
it's not always easy to do, and not maybe not possible for every, depending on the organization or the type of individual. But I used to do it opposite, right? Who's screaming the loudest, and what are how do I knock off my task list, and then if there's time left, I'll focus on those things that where I don't have to
Move
be
the
present
needle.
for anybody else.
Yeah, move the needle, and it's yeah, flipping it is the way. Yeah, exactly that, because that's exactly what I had been doing for so long at the start of like the business journey. And you think to yourself, one thing, next thing, before you know it, you have to be more strategic with your time. It's as simple as that.
I found this is really parallel in my personal life too. It's kind of we're, as business leaders, we need to show up for the business, and how do we do that in the role, only those roles only that we can fulfill, right? Because we've decided that only we can fulfill that, right? And so in personal life, it's no difference. And when I put everybody else before myself, then by the end of the day, I'm tired, and I don't want to exercise. I don't want to eat a good meal because I don't want to take the time to prepare it. And over time, that has a negative impact on me, and I get to where I don't have the energy to support those I care most about. Right? When we put ourselves first, and it doesn't mean we have to sacrifice others. We don't have to sacrifice our relationships, but when we put ourselves first, we fill up our cup, and then we have more to give. And in business, it's no different. As leaders, our team needs us. They need us to show up for them. And if we don't have a vision of where we're going, if we can't define or provide clarity there, then how are they going to get on board with that? How are we going to find alignment there? How are we going to make sure that we're all moving forward together? If we are not fulfilled ourselves, how are we going to ask them how they're doing? How are we going to show up for them? How are we going to make sure there's alignment in values? So I think there's parallels there. But yeah, ever since I made that shift, it has made a significant difference in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Sounds like we're alike in that way.
Indeed, indeed, absolutely. So, what are the most important metrics for you when running the business?
So top line revenue is should be a priority for every business probably, but that's definitely a priority for us. Each business unit has a set of KPIs as far as the business as a whole. I care about customer retention because that's a sign of customer satisfaction for me. And so are we meeting our sales metrics? We have goals of what revenue should look like on a quarterly basis. We have goals of what customer retention should look like on a quarterly basis. And then everything else is a little bit more granular than that, but those are the two key metrics that I care about. The third would probably be, from a priority standpoint, is employee retention. To the people internally, that is this theory of, if we are taking care of our people, then they're going to take care of our customers, right? And so the priority should be on them before our clients. And so if we're taking care of them, and they are getting fulfillment, and they see themselves as a value add to the organization because we're telling them and showing them that they are, then ideally they're sticking around.
Love it. Love it. How are you currently growing the business? What kind of marketing activities are you specifically doing? Business development activities are you doing to grow the business?
Aside from traditional marketing efforts and using digital media on our website, we're starting to do more on LinkedIn and starting to branch that into other social media aspects. But that's still very new, and so we're still testing it, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. Channel partners is something that we have been investing into for the last couple of years, and it's starting to pay dividends now, where we are leaning more heavily into building relationships with third-party organizations and individuals within those organizations, that where there's alignment but very little, if any, overlap in the services we provide, where we can provide introductions into their customer base, or they can provide instructions to our customer base, and grow revenue in a more scalable fashion than individual sales reps internally.
Love it. Love it. And you've been an entrepreneur, business owner for many, many years now, very well experienced in the world. What's the biggest lesson you can share with us today, the viewers and listeners?
Nothing thing is so important that we can't take the time to breathe and have a conversation with another human being and think about our decisions before taking action.
Love it. It's fantastic. Jared, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I like to end every single podcast with the same question. And that is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one of your business problems, what would that be?
I would say right now that I would like a crystal ball to see what AI is going to look like for our customers in 5 years down the road, because things are moving so fast and it's hard for us to keep up in a timeline to educate our clients and get them prepared. And that would be a wonderful magic item that a magic wand might deliver.
Yeah. Well, you and many, many others have that same magic one. I can tell you that. I've asked that question, and AI always comes up. It's insane what's happening right now, but it's moving so fast. It's so difficult to keep up. Jared, it's been an absolute fantastic conversation. You've been a phenomenal guest. For all those viewers out there and listeners out there who may want to reach out to you, may want to find, where would they go? Where would they find you?
Easiest way is to our website. Blue Tree Technology Group has a domain, www.bluetreetg.
So we'll put it all in the show notes. Again, Jared, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Syed. This has been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me.